Hello everyone, ladies and gentlemen. I am here to present a universal Dharma teaching to help us transcend suffering. This is the very first episode of the Universal Dharma series, and I would like to dedicate this session to the topic of the mind. The explanation will be straightforward, aimed at helping us understand the nature of the mind, enabling us to tackle the root cause of suffering.
This teaching is open to everyone, regardless of religion, nationality, age, or physical condition, whether young or old, male or female. All are welcome to listen to this Dharma teaching. This teaching is universal Dharma, and I must speak with caution to ensure the content remains neutral and does not align with any particular perspective. It is a balanced and central truth, something none of us have ever truly heard or understood before. It is about the mind, a profound knowledge that most of us have never paid attention to because no one has taught us, and no one has recognized that our mind is a pure essence. It is the original, natural element, a fundamental life essence that is formless, neither coming nor going, neither born nor dying, neither dark nor bright, and independent of spoken language. The mind is an exceptionally pure and empty essence. In truth, this natural essence doesn't inherently have a name like mind. It is only through language that we convey this concept to one another. The language I am using is what we refer to as conventional language, isn't it? Regardless of what language or nation it belongs to, language is merely an expression of the mind. The words we speak are simply reflections of the mind. However, the essence of the mind itself has no expression. It is a clear and empty nature, devoid of characteristics. Before diving into the core of this universal Dharma, I want to emphasize its essence. Once we truly understand it, we can transcend suffering. My sole purpose in sharing this teaching is to guide all of us on this planet toward liberation from suffering. All suffering arises from our own mind's desire to learn and its tendency to create manifestations, which we then cling to and become attached to. This clinging leads to the creation of language, mental images, emotions, and awareness of various phenomena. These manifestations are merely expressions or actions of the mind. They are not the mind itself. However, our mind becomes deluded, relying on these tools and mistaking them for reality. The key point is this: the mind, or let's simply refer to it as us, this pure essence, remains unaware of its own true nature as a pure, natural essence. Not knowing this, it creates tools to modify, construct, and express itself. These tools include the sounds we use to communicate, the mental images we visualize, and the means through which we attempt to understand one another. Let us envision a leopard. These images serve as instruments of communication and understanding. Both sounds and mental pictures are tools we use to convey meaning. When reality aligns with our thoughts and mental images, when it flows with our spoken words, contentment naturally arises. Yet when reality diverges from our expectations and imaginings, dissatisfaction emerges. For instance, when we speak within our heart-mind, when thoughts arise in our consciousness, this inner dialogue is another form of communication. For example, if you're thinking, I want to visit my mother in the countryside tomorrow, and your partner responds, sure, let's take time off work and go tomorrow. You feel joy, satisfaction, and happiness. But what are these? The thoughts, the mental images, and the resulting emotions. These are simply manifestations of the mind. These are tools of the mind. They're not the essence of the mind itself, which is empty, clear, and a pure, formless life essence. We trust in our spoken words as truth, believing in the sounds, mental images, and emotions that arise. We truly believe in our joy, in our anticipated reunion with Mother, in the reality of all these experiences. When we think of visiting home, creating mental pictures, and our partner says, not now, we're too busy, let's wait. Do you see how displeasure instantly manifests? Whenever we think, imagine, or speak, whether internally or aloud, we depend on these sounds. When we become attached to these sounds and mental images, satisfaction and dissatisfaction immediately arise. These are all manifestations of mind. When dissatisfaction emerges, anger follows, a negative emotional state. We become angry at our partner, at everything. We might refuse dinner, avoid cooking, do nothing at all, retreat to our room, completely overcome by emotions. Who suffers then? Who is suffering now? Is it not us? Why do we foolishly suffer over these manifestations? Can we grasp these states of satisfaction or dissatisfaction? Do they have substance? Can we touch the words spoken aloud or in our minds? We cannot, can we? These sounds are intangible. The images we conjure cannot be grasped. Neither can emotions of satisfaction, dissatisfaction, or anger be held. So why do we sink into these manifestations? Because we believe in a self, don't we? If there is no self, why do we cling to these states, dwell in them? All of these are symptoms of the mind, but we are the mind itself, the pure, empty essence. It isn't anything in particular. What I want to point out to all of us to help us understand and see is a universal knowledge that everyone should grasp. It's what I call the science of liberation from suffering. This is a universal teaching that we should all learn. My team and I will translate this universal teaching into various languages and disseminate it across social media so that people in every country can listen. The goal is singular, to help everyone be free from suffering. This applies especially to people of different nationalities and religions. It has nothing to do with religion, nationality, or anything like that. It's about the mind, all of our minds. Each of us has a mind, and this mind clings to its states, leading us to sink into suffering along with those states. When we feel happy, we sink into that happiness. When we feel sad, we sink into that sadness. Even as I speak, we get carried away by the sound of my voice. Have you ever noticed that since we were born and lived all these years, we keep asking ourselves, what do we truly want in life? Some people carry this question deep within. What is it that we really want from this life? Some of us may carry this question silently in our hearts. What do I truly want from being alive? Have you noticed that this clear emptiness is the original element? It is the element that existed before everything else. Before stars came into being, this clear, empty element was already there. This is the original element, the original nature that existed before everything else. And we are this very original element. We are the living, empty, clear element, one with the clear emptiness throughout the infinite universe. Let's try removing this physical body. Imagine removing this body completely. What remains is the mind, which is the pure, clear, empty element, along with its manifestations. This remains the manifestations that coat the mind. These manifestations perform the function of rippling, showing characteristics that cover the mind. Let's try removing these manifestations. What are these manifestations? The manifestations that coat and cover the mind are thoughts or the sounds we're speaking right now. The sounds we're currently relying on are thoughts. There is meaning within these sounds, isn't there? These are conceptual thoughts. These thoughts include the images we imagine. There are sounds and images we're imagining, along with emotions, whether they're satisfaction, dissatisfaction, or neutral feelings, whatever kind of emotion. All of these are manifestations. The next aspect is the manifestation of knowing, the awareness that knows. We're aware of sounds, and when we're aware of sounds, this knowing happens by itself without trying to know. Can we notice that this knowing happens by itself without trying to know? It knows continuously. Do you see this? If we see that sounds, mental images, all emotions, this knowing awareness, even our memories, even our understanding, all of these are merely manifestations of mind. Can you understand this? If we remove these manifestations of mind, we've already removed the physical body, leaving the mind's manifestations, and now remove these manifestations of mind. What remains is just the mind itself, which is a pure, clear, empty element, empty and merged with all things. We are this element that is clear, purely empty, that doesn't have anything, isn't anything. We are this pure element. To help us understand this more clearly, let's use an analogy. Imagine our mind as the yolk of an egg. The yolk represents the essence of the mind, pure and untouched. Surrounding the yolk, the egg white is created as a protective layer. This egg white symbolizes the manifestations of the mind, such as thoughts, emotions, and perceptions. If the yolk is the mind, then the egg white is its manifestations. The egg white's purpose is to shield the yolk. It acts as a dynamic buffer, a tool for interaction, constantly shifting and responding to its environment. Beyond the egg white, there's also the eggshell, which provides an additional layer of protection and gives the egg its outer form. Together, the egg white and the shell shield the yolk from external impact. In the same way, the pure essence of the mind, the yolk, creates these layers, manifestations, and outward appearances to protect and interact with the world. These layers are tools, not the essence itself. The mind relies on these layers, which often obscure the recognition of its true nature. Now consider the state of deep sleep. When we're in deep sleep, everything disappears. The sensations, thoughts, and awareness of self. What remains is pure existence, unconditioned and formless. That state where there's no concept of I, no thoughts, no emotions, is the true essence of the mind, pure, clear, and empty. So why can't we perceive this true nature while awake? It's because the pure essence has surrounded itself with layers of manifestations, covering itself. These layers obscure our ability to recognize our true nature, which is the unchanging, pure, and formless life essence. To truly understand this, we need to see beyond these layers, letting go of the identifications with thoughts, emotions, and forms, and recognize the pure essence that has always been there, untouched and eternal. The nature of clear water can be compared to the nature of the mind. Clear water represents the mind. When something touches the water, it responds by rippling, creating effects and various patterns known as waves. These patterns on the surface are merely manifestations. They are not the clear water itself. Clear water remains clear water by its nature. However, the ripples and waves are a natural consequence of having water. They are inseparable from it. Similarly, where there is a mind, there will naturally be manifestations. These manifestations include the sounds we speak, which are tools created by the mind. The mind creates these tools just as the yolk creates the egg white to protect itself. The egg white, in turn, creates the shell as another protective tool. The mind, which is a pure, empty, and clear essence, generates tools known as manifestations. These include sounds, mental images, and emotions, which we continuously engage with, often becoming absorbed in them. These manifestations, along with the awareness of them, are all tools created by the mind. We are immersed in these manifestations, so let me simplify it into key concepts for clarity. If you understand this, everything else will fall into place. The pure, empty essence of our mind seeks to learn. This is the essential point. This pure and clear essence, like an innocent child, is inherently pure and curious. To learn, this essence requires tools, which we call manifestations. These tools take the form of sounds, images, emotions, and awareness. These four elements are all manifestations that we create to assign meaning and value to experiences. For instance, the sounds we speak are tools for communication, while the images we visualize also serve to convey and understand meaning. Emotions arise as responses to whether something aligns with or contradicts our thoughts and expectations. Awareness, such as hearing a sound, arises naturally and automatically. It is an inherent function of the mind. The problem is that we forget we are the mind itself, a pure, empty, and clear essence like an innocent child. We become lost in the manifestations and mistakenly identify with them. If we can grasp this truth, something profound may happen. An emotional release, such as sudden tears, may occur as the mind begins to free itself from its attachment to these manifestations. Our mind, as the original essence, is the primordial element. It is the source of all, eternal and unchanging, a truly immortal essence. This pure mind has never been anything and has never been tied to anything. The countless manifestations it creates, ripples, sounds, images, and emotions, are not the mind itself and cannot affect or alter its essence. Recognizing this truth allows the mind to release itself from the illusions it has created. It's like creating a tool to catch fish. The fishing tool is something we crafted. It's just a means to an end. We don't truly want the tool itself. We use it solely to catch fish. Once the fish is caught, the tool becomes meaningless. The mind functions in a similar way. The mind, being a pure and innocent essence like a child, is inherently curious and seeks to learn. To facilitate this learning, it creates tools, manifestations, to explore and understand. These tools are not the essence of the mind, they are simply temporary aids for its journey of discovery. Another analogy, imagine you want to explore the underwater world. To do so, you need tools, right? You need a diving suit, an oxygen tank, a mask, and perhaps even a submarine to reach the deepest depths of the ocean. These tools are essential for learning about the underwater world. However, you don't truly desire the tools themselves. You use them temporarily to fulfill the purpose of exploration. Once you've completed your learning, these tools become unnecessary and you can discard them. They were never your true goal. They were only temporary aids for discovery. Similarly, while exploring, if one of these tools, like a diving suit, becomes damaged, it doesn't matter much. You simply replace it and continue your exploration. Once the learning is complete, the tools, regardless of their condition, are left behind. The tools are not you, and they are not your ultimate purpose. The real purpose is the exploration itself. In the same way, our mind, which is pure and clear, uses manifestations like sounds, images, emotions, and awareness as tools for learning. But these manifestations are not our true nature, and they are not what we truly seek. The issue is that we become attached to these tools and mistake them for our essence, which causes suffering. Understanding this can bring immense clarity. When we realize that our suffering arises from mistakenly clinging to these manifestations, a profound release occurs. Tears may flow as the mind frees itself from this attachment. The path to liberation lies in observing the mind within, becoming aware of what is happening in the present moment. Try this exercise. Close your eyes and focus your awareness on the center of your chest. Notice the sound of my voice resonating there. Observe how your mind is aware of this sound. Keep your attention gently on the center of your chest and recognize that the awareness of the sound is happening naturally. Through such observation, you begin to see beyond the tools of the mind and reconnect with its pure, unchanging essence. Here is an analogy. At this moment, our mind is naturally aware of this sound. There is no need to make an effort to hear or recognize it. It is aware by its own nature. You could be sweeping the floor, mopping, or doing any activity, and yet the awareness of the sound remains. This awareness continues effortlessly, no matter what you do. Pay close attention to the sound as you move. If you walk, the mind is aware of the sound. If you stand, it remains aware of the sound. Even if you flip your body or go to the bathroom, the awareness of the sound persists. In every posture, this awareness is present. Observe this carefully. The awareness arises naturally. You do not need to try to be aware. It happens on its own. This is the key. Recognize that this awareness is functioning by its own nature. Then ask yourself, where am I in this awareness? Let your mind answer. Reflect deeply and observe internally. Now turn your attention inward and notice the inner voice within your mind. Try silently saying to yourself, I am hungry, I want to eat, I want to travel. Observe the process without speaking aloud. Does your mind have a mouth? How can it speak? The mind has no physical mouth, yet it produces words internally. Where does this inner voice come from? This is an expression of the mind's manifestations. It is a natural function, a ripple of the mind itself. We have forgotten that we are the mind itself, a pure, empty, and clear essence. This pure essence of the mind uses manifestations as tools for communication. It utilizes the inner voice to think and understand, and it uses mental images such as picturing a favorite meal to visualize and interact. Why do these images appear in the mind? Why do sounds resonate within? Do we have a projector inside us? How does the mind create these pictures and sounds? This is the nature of the mind's manifestations. Our mind possesses a powerful toolkit. It can think, speak internally, visualize, remember, and even feel emotions. For instance, when our thoughts align with what we want or imagine, it brings satisfaction. Conversely, when reality diverges from what we think or desire, it leads to dissatisfaction. But observe this closely. Where do these emotions, satisfaction, dissatisfaction, or neutrality, come from? Notice that the mind itself is formless, intangible, and without a physical body. The inner voice, the images, and even the emotions cannot be grasped. They arise and pass away. Is there an owner of these manifestations? This is the key question. Do these manifestations belong to anyone? No, they don't. The inner voice arises, speaks, and then disappears. Where does it go? Mental images appear and then vanish. Where do they go? They emerge from and dissolve into the clear, empty essence of the mind. The mind is a pure, empty, and formless element. It is unconditioned and free. This essence belongs to no one. It is the original, foundational element of life. By observing deeply, we can see the mind's purity and clarity. Let's try again. Silently say to yourself, I want to eat, I want to travel, I want to watch a movie. Visualize the food, the place you want to visit, and the movie you want to see. Notice how both the sounds and the images arise and then disappear. They originate from the clear emptiness of the mind. Do you see this? Where are we in all this? Let your mind answer. Emotions, too, are just manifestations that arise and pass. If we don't cling to these manifestations, we can see them for what they are, temporary phenomena. The sounds arise on their own and fade away on their own. If someone insults or praises us, it's just sound arising and disappearing. It is simply something appearing briefly with no lasting substance. Observe carefully. If you pay close attention and stay focused on my voice, you will notice that this sound is merely something that arises and then fades away. Each word appears and then vanishes. It is just something that touches the mind and then disappears. Our mind is naturally aware of this sound. The mind knows this sound by itself, without any effort or intention. There is no owner of this awareness. It knows on its own. Can you recognize this? Now, where are we in all of this? That is the key question. Where are we? Let the mind answer this question until a voice arises spontaneously from within, saying there is no self, or anything that conveys the meaning of no self. When this arises naturally, without any effort or intention to create it, and the mind exclaims, there is no self, tears may flow uncontrollably, and a sense of lightness and freedom will arise. It will feel as though the pure essence of the mind has been released from its manifestations. Here is an analogy to make this clearer. Why do we suffer? It is because we rely on sound. Sound is merely a manifestation, not something that belongs to us. It is just a temporary tool used by the mind, a fleeting phenomenon that is not truly ours. We are the mind, an innocent, pure, and clear essence like a child. This essence is the original element, the primordial state that existed before everything. It is the foundation, the source of all, akin to the initial emptiness that pervaded everything before the universe came into existence. This was the clear, boundless emptiness that existed before the Big Bang, a scientific explanation of how everything began. At the moment of the Big Bang, a singular point exploded, creating an immense burst of energy. This explosion produced matter in its most basic form, tiny particles or dust. Initially, there was only an energetic reaction, a manifestation of the explosion. These manifestations condensed into tiny atomic particles, electrons, protons, and neutrons, each with its own energy field orbiting around it. These particles interacted, attracted, and gathered through forces of gravity and energy, forming celestial objects. Some of these became stars like the sun, while others cooled and solidified into planets. Within this process, life began to emerge. Here lies the connection. The mind, our pure and clear essence, predates all this creation. When the Big Bang occurred, this essence, the mind, was impacted. The pristine, empty essence, like an innocent child, responded to the interaction and began to transform. This transformation was the emergence of manifestations. Much like an egg yolk creates egg whites and a shell to protect itself, the original essence, the pure and clear mind, became a part of this universe. It responded to the interaction by forming an awareness, akin to ripples on water when a stone is thrown in. The still water, when touched, first perceives the impact, then creates waves. These waves are not the water itself, they are just its manifestations. Similarly, the mind, when touched by the Big Bang, created an outer layer of awareness, like a bubble enclosing its essence. This bubble of awareness arose as the mind's response to the first interaction. It was not the mind itself, but a manifestation created by the mind to interact with and respond to the external phenomena. This pure essence remains untouched, clear, and boundless, while its manifestations, awareness, and sensations are temporary ripples responding to external impacts. This is the nature of the mind's interaction with existence. And the mind, as a pure and clear essence, is like an innocent child. It only wants to learn, but it cannot learn because it is a transparent essence. Therefore, it creates a membrane to receive impacts. When impacted, it perceives. The sound we hear now is the act of perception. Once it perceives, it generates effects, rippling outward as continuous vibrations. These vibrations manifest as the inner voice, images, and emotions. This is the nature of the mind. The mind creates a membrane to surround itself. When this transparent essence is impacted, it ripples, perceives, and begins to construct and learn from that external matter. If the mind finds that the matter is suitable to attach to, it clings to it. This leads to the creation of life, starting with a single cell, then multiplying into 2 cells, 3 cells, and so on until it becomes what we know today. The physical body is a mass of matter that the mind inhabits, bringing it to life. If we were to remove the mind or the clear, empty essence of life from this body, the body would collapse immediately. It would fall lifeless and begin to decay. Even with a brain, it could no longer think. Even with a heart, it would no longer beat. The body can only live because the mind inhabits it. The mind is the essence of life. It is like a robot with a battery. A robot may have programs, microprocessors, and a perfectly functioning electrical system, no matter how advanced or sophisticated it is. But without a battery, without electricity, it is nothing more than a heap of useless metal, devoid of value or purpose. However, when a battery or electricity is connected to it, the programs and microprocessors begin to operate. The robot opens its eyes, moves, and begins to function, becoming what we call a living robot. We ascribe life to it because it can perceive and operate. Why do we consider it alive? Because it has electricity, because it has a battery connected to it. If I were to say that the battery powering the robot is simply a source of energy, one form of energy connected to it, that would be accurate. Similarly, the mind, as the essence of life, inhabits the mass of matter that is the body. This is why the body has life. Do you understand this? Therefore, the key point is this. When we say we suffer greatly, it is because we associate suffering with this body. We suffer because the body becomes ill, incomplete, or afflicted with countless conditions: cancer, diabetes, high cholesterol, migraines, blood disorders, bone disorders, and more. This body is merely a tool that we temporarily inhabit. Do you understand this? The mind is a pure, empty essence. It seeks to learn and has created manifestations to perceive impacts, to ripple and fabricate into sounds, images, emotions, and sensations. It inhabits this vessel, the body, to facilitate its learning. However, the problem lies here. It learns only about external things. It focuses entirely on the external and never turns inward to learn about itself. From birth, we have been taught by our parents to learn, to think, to remember, to work for a living. We have been taught to believe that we are human beings with names, but when we turn inward and observe the mind, we see its true nature, the original essence that is our source. This essence is pure, empty, and clear. It is the true, unchanging core of who we are. This pure essence creates manifestations to ripple, to fabricate and perceive. It creates sounds, images, emotions, and awareness. These manifestations are tools for communication. Using these tools, we assign meanings such as, this is my left arm, this is my right arm, this is my left leg, this is my right leg. The sound arises to convey this, but if you place your hand on your leg, does it speak, saying it is the left leg or the right leg? When you look at your leg, all that is there is a blank awareness, an awareness without language. Let us observe by sweeping our gaze from left to right. What arises is only a blank awareness, a knowing without anyone knowing. This is the natural function of the mind. When it encounters an impact, it simply knows. For example, when the eyes perceive, the mind knows. The ears perceive sound, and the mind knows. The mind perceives through its windows: the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. It perceives without language. Now try not to think. Just observe and let the mind simply know. Sit in any position, on a chair if you like, close your eyes, and observe. You will notice that there is a constant awareness of something. You might sense the wind blowing, but this awareness does not label it as wind. It simply knows something. Observe how this knowing arises naturally and fades away. You might hear something, a chirping sound, a meow, or the noise of a car passing by. The mind perceives these sounds through the windows of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. It always knows something, yet it does not use language to describe what it knows. For example, when a car passes by, the sound is just there. It is known, but it doesn't say, "This is a car." The knowing arises naturally without effort, purely by its nature. Do you see how the mind knows on its own? When the mind accepts this truth, that it is a pure, empty, and clear essence, not the act of knowing, not the sounds, not the images, and not the emotions, when it realizes that it is an empty essence, undefined and unattached, then liberation begins. At the moment we observe and recognize that the sound we hear is perceived by itself, we must ask, where are we in this? Let the mind answer, without thinking or using the brain. Simply observe inwardly. When we do this, we will be freed from suffering entirely. We will understand that our true suffering arises because we cling to the manifestations, the constant sounds, the inner chatter, the voice that speaks continuously in our mind. We become lost in these manifestations and flow along with them. Recognizing this truth brings complete liberation from suffering. We will realize that our true suffering arises because we cling to the manifestations, especially the inner voice that constantly speaks within us. We attach to this voice, flowing along with it. Imagine saying any word in your mind like doggy. As soon as you hear the sound of the word, there is a momentary sense of something, and then it becomes empty. There is nothing left. Can you see that if we simply observe things as they are, without clinging or attaching, everything naturally arises, touches the mind, and fades away? For instance, when we hear the meow of a cat or the chirping of birds, the sound arises and then disappears. When we take food into our mouth, chew and swallow, that action too arises and passes away. Even the smell that enters our nose is perceived automatically. We don't need to try to smell it. The mind knows it by itself, assigns meaning to it, and then it fades. If we observe inwardly, we can see that the mind knows on its own. Ask yourself, where are we in this? Observe carefully. The awareness of these things arises from emptiness and fades back into emptiness. From waking to sleeping, the mind continuously perceives. Just observe this without thinking, without trying to analyze. Notice that the mind is aware of everything naturally, and yet this awareness is not us. When we eat, we can observe. Take a spoonful of food. It could be curry, chili paste, or anything. And as you chew, notice how the mind knows the sensation on its own. It knows and then lets it go. There is no self in nature. There is only nature functioning as it does. Why then do we cling to nature? Emotions arise and fade. Sounds appear and disappear. Images come and go. Satisfaction arises and fades. Dissatisfaction arises and fades. The awareness of these things is happening on its own, naturally. So where are we? Let the mind answer. If the mind observes deeply, it will see that the inner voice that speaks constantly is just a tool. It is not us. We are the pure, empty, and clear essence. This essence does not suffer. It is completely free from suffering, profoundly pure, like an innocent child. This is our true nature. But our mind is a pure essence. It clings to and relies on something external, like a child relying on an adult. Imagine we are this pure essence, depending on an adult who functions as the voice, another adult who functions as the image, another as the emotion, and another as awareness. We cling to these adults, becoming entangled and absorbed in their activities. Now try stepping back. Let the voice do its work without clinging. Step back and let the imagined images perform their function. Step back and allow the emotions, whether satisfaction, dissatisfaction, or neutrality, to simply play their roles. Step back and let the awareness be aware on its own. As we step back, we will begin to see that none of these are truly us. So, where are we? There will come a natural moment when the answer arises on its own. There is no self. This is the moment when the mind itself recognizes and accepts this truth. This is teaching the mind to see the reality that it is a pure essence, unconnected to the voice, the images, the emotions, or the awareness. These are all merely manifestations, not the mind itself. When the mind realizes this truth, it separates from these manifestations. It becomes distinct, as though stepping out from the body, from the voice, from the images, from the emotions, and from awareness itself. It detaches completely from all manifestations. Then we become aware of something extraordinary. This space within us is empty, light, and free. It is clear and weightless, unburdened by any attachment. Whoever listens to this universal teaching, especially on the subject of the mind, will come to transcend all suffering. From this understanding, we on this earth will no longer harm or oppress one another. Why is this so? It is because we come to see the truth. There is nothing that truly belongs to us, and there is nothing that is truly us. This body exists temporarily. It arises only to eventually decay and disintegrate. The body inevitably experiences pain, illness, and dissolution, but it is not who we are. It is merely a manifestation that occurs as it must. Do you understand this? It is like striking the surface of water with a stick. If you hit it hard, there will be a loud sound and the water will splash everywhere. But this is simply how it works, isn't it? No matter how hard you strike, how loud the sound, or how forceful the splash, the water itself remains unchanged. It remains clear and undisturbed in its essence. The splashes and sounds are merely manifestations. They are not the water itself. In the same way, we are like the clear and empty essence of the mind, untouched and unaffected. Imagine this. We've all experienced intense happiness, deep sadness, and extreme pain in the past. Where are those experiences now? They have disappeared. Despite everything we've gone through, nothing truly affects us. These experiences, whether joy, sadness, or pain, are just manifestations. Like striking the surface of water, the splash and sound are intense, but the water itself remains clear and unchanged. Similarly, we are the pure, empty essence, untouched by what happens around us. This pure emptiness is our true self. Within it, air moves like the mind's manifestations. Wind, storms, and hurricanes may arise, but they're temporary and don't affect the emptiness. Even if an atomic bomb destroys everything, including our body, the pure, empty essence of our mind remains unharmed. It is beyond destruction. Right now, our pure, empty essence is clinging to this sound, this image, this emotion, and this awareness. If we observe carefully, we can see that what is being spoken is not actually a sound. It is simply something. It is not us speaking, nor is there anyone hearing it. It is merely a manifestation of the mind rippling outward. The mind ripples in awareness, in reaction, and in fabrication. These ripples manifest as sound, as images, as emotions, and as awareness. This rippling continues endlessly from the moment we wake until we fall asleep. It is simply the nature of the mind's manifestations. When we are asleep, everything disappears as if we had never existed in this world. In that state of disappearance, it feels as though we are completely absent. But when we begin to wake up, the mind starts to cling to manifestations. As the mind, which is the pure, empty essence, begins to attach to these manifestations, it acts like a transparent membrane, like a bubble. This transparent essence clings to the manifestations. It attaches to the adult that is sound, the adult that is images, the adult that is emotions, and the adult that is awareness. As soon as the mind clings, it begins to function. It stretches out like four hands reaching to grasp, one to think, one to imagine, one to feel emotions, and one to perceive. These manifestations immediately create thoughts such as, is it morning already? Do I have to get up for work again? Or, what time is it? Is it 4 a.m. already? Notice the inner voice speaking as soon as you wake up. Along with this voice, emotions of satisfaction or dissatisfaction arise, as well as the awareness of waking up as a human being. Thoughts, emotions, and perceptions appear the moment we wake up. If we observe carefully, we will see that these manifestations are not truly us. The moment we wake, the mind begins fabricating instantly. It thinks, imagines, feels, and perceives immediately. But all these are just manifestations. They are not the true self. If we simply observe and step back, and see the phenomena working on their own, if we observe and see that it is working on its own, and gain the understanding that this is not us, tears will flow. Tears will flow, and there is a great sense of relief and lightness. This feeling is liberation from suffering. As we keep understanding in this way, we come to feel that this voice is not us, and even the awareness itself is not us. Then, where are we? And the answer arises on its own. There is no self. Keep listening to my tapes, and it will become lighter, clearer. The more you listen, the lighter it gets. There's no reason to suffer, because suffering is just a phenomenon. We shouldn't foolishly cling to suffering. It's merely a phenomenon. A sound makes contact. It's just a phenomenon, and then it disappears. A visual appearance arises and then vanishes. Joyful emotions arise. They are just phenomena. Laughter happens on its own. Nobody owns the laughter. Then this laughter fades away. After a while, irritation, dissatisfaction, anger, loneliness, or sadness arise. These two are just phenomena that arise on their own. So why do we cling to them? They are not ours. They are intangible. We cannot grasp emotions at all. Have you noticed? Joyful emotions cannot be grasped, cannot be shaped into a solid form. Sadness, dissatisfaction, and displeasure also cannot be grasped, cannot be shaped into a solid form. This sound cannot be grasped, cannot be shaped into a solid form. Images cannot be grasped, cannot be shaped into a solid form. Even this awareness, it's just aware on its own. It doesn't need to do anything at all. Just understanding that these phenomena we mistakenly cling to and hold on to are suffering, we get absorbed in the emotions, leading to the feeling that there is a self that truly suffers. But in reality, there is no one suffering. It's merely a phenomenon of the mind doing its duty. It's like when we hit water with a stick, the water naturally reacts. That reaction isn't the water itself. It's just a phenomenon. The water remains unaffected. Our mind is like a clear, empty essence right in front of us. If a very happy person walks by, does this clear, empty essence receive that happiness? It does not, right? When a very distressed person walks by, does this clear, empty essence feel distressed? It does not, right? If heat radiates into this clear, empty essence, it remains unaffected by the heat. Heat is simply something that exists within the clear, empty essence. If cold is introduced into this clear, empty essence, it remains unaware of the cold because it has nothing to do with cold or heat. Do you understand? This clear, empty essence is like a foundation for everything to reside within. Darkness can reside within the clear, empty essence. Light can also reside within it. But the clear, empty essence is neither darkness nor light. It is a neutral element that allows all conditioned phenomena to reside within it. We are this pure essence. Whoever understands this universal dharma for the purpose of ending suffering will understand that what is being pointed out to us is that we were never really born into this world. There are only phenomena. The phenomenon of sound, the phenomenon of sight, the phenomenon of movement and feeling, the phenomenon of knowing, the phenomenon of emotions. There are only phenomena, but these things are not us. They appear and then disappear. We depend on these phenomena. The mind is a pure element that relies on these phenomena from waking until sleeping, until it stops relying on them when we sleep. As soon as we sleep, it stops depending on phenomena, and everything completely vanishes. What remains is a state of being nothing at all. It only lacks awareness. When we are in deep sleep, it remains a pure element as before, but it just lacks awareness. It has no wisdom, no knowledge of what it is, that's all. When we listen to this universal truth, we begin to understand that this is it. Once we understand, it becomes lighter, clearer, and continues to lighten until, eventually, there is complete liberation. Our mind is an empty, clear element. It will separate from phenomena, making it clear that phenomena are one thing, and the mind as a pure, empty, clear element is another thing. They are unrelated. Once we clearly see this for ourselves, it will happen naturally. We'll begin to feel lighter and more spacious until there is release. When this release happens, we'll realize we are not a person. It will completely break free. Then we'll know that we are an element that is nothing at all, free from suffering, beyond everything. We will fully understand this universal dharma and will know, I want everyone in the world to hear this. Let us share this universal dharma on the Freedom from Suffering Through Knowledge page. Share it so everyone in this world can hear it. Then everyone in this world will find peace and tranquility. We will no longer suffer. It's like we've entered a dream world and believed everything was real. But once we understand the truth that nothing is really us, we'll break free from this dream world. We'll come to know that we are this mind that is an empty, clear, pure element. We are a pure element, a formless life force that is everything. Even our physical body breaks down into its elements. But you know what? Our mind, which is an empty, clear element, is not anything at all. It is absolutely nothing. When we reflect back and realize that we are this pure element, why do we rely on these tools? Why were we foolish enough to suffer? Suffering is merely a phenomenon. We were foolish to cling to happiness, foolish to cling to suffering, foolish to cling to sounds, foolish to cling to mental images, foolish to cling to the phenomenon of knowing, even though all these things are merely phenomena, not us. When we understand this with our mind, let the mind accept it naturally. Listen often, and when the mind accepts this, we will understand for ourselves what 100% freedom from suffering is like. This recording has reached its time, so let us end here. May all of us realize this universal dharma and instantly achieve complete freedom from suffering.